Welcome to the Addiction Mindset Recovery Coaching YouTube channel, where we are dedicated to helping people quit nicotine, THC, energy drinks, and adult media content, substances I once struggled with. If you wind up enjoying today's presentation on the physiology of nicotine withdrawal, a story of cortisol, blood sugar, and dopamine, be sure to check the pinned comment or the video description to learn more about our programs, both paid and free resources. All right. Today, we're going to discuss everything that you need to know about nicotine withdrawal. And this is going to apply whether or not you vape nicotine, smoke cigarettes, chew tobacco, use Zyn, Nicorette gum, nicotine pouches, nicotine patches. It doesn't matter. The information in today's presentation is going to apply to you. Because once you can understand why you're experiencing the nicotine withdrawal symptoms, it allows you to better craft a plan when it comes to quitting. When you understand what's going on in your body, it makes the quitting process a heck of a lot easier and a heck of a lot anxiety provoking. We can reverse engineer nicotine withdrawal, and we're going to do that by explaining what exactly it is, why it happens, how to manage nicotine withdrawal symptoms. We're going to talk about lifestyle factors. We're going to talk about supplements. We're going to talk about nicotine replacement therapy and even potentially medication. We're going to discuss a timeline for nicotine withdrawal and then alternative options when it comes to management as well. What is nicotine withdrawal? Nicotine withdrawal is a host of different symptoms that a person may or may not experience. And I can't emphasize that enough. Just because you're quitting nicotine doesn't mean that you're going to experience nicotine withdrawal symptoms. Everyone is very, very different. And there's so many people that won't even attempt to quit because they've heard of these big, bad nicotine withdrawal symptoms that other people went through. And the sad thing is, some people, when they quit using nicotine, they don't even realize it. Like, it's not a big deal. These symptoms of withdrawal occur as your body is going through the process of nicotine detox. So once you start to detox nicotine, the withdrawal symptoms start to set in. It's both physiological and psychological symptoms. It can be anxiety, hunger, blood pressure, and heart rate changes, insomnia, fatigue, irritability, definitely cravings, and headache. All of these symptoms are possible symptoms of nicotine withdrawal that the person quitting may or may not experience. What's a timeline for nicotine withdrawal? Well, the first 24 hours, this is typically where cravings start to set in. Usually people do pretty good on the first day, especially if you're quitting from the right state of mind. If you go into quitting from a place of motivation versus deprivation, usually the first day goes pretty good because nicotine, it stays in your bloodstream typically for about 72 hours. So you still have nicotine floating around in your system on day one. There might be some anxiety. There might be some irritability because you might want to, hit your vape or smoke a cigarette or, pop a Zyn in the upper deck, whatever it is. But overall, people usually do well. You should notice within the first 24 hours, blood pressure start to decrease. For some people, though, I will say blood pressure might increase if they are having a lot of anxiety and stress over the cravings of not having nicotine. Days 2 to 3, and I'd really argue even days up to day 5, this is usually where you see the peak withdrawal symptoms because it's around day 3 to 5 when nicotine completely detoxes from your body. So now you're at that point where you have no more nicotine left circulating in your blood. And this is a really common point of relapse for people when they're quitting vaping, quitting smoking, quitting dipping, whatever, days 3 to 5, because they hit those peak withdrawal symptoms. They were doing pretty good on day 1 and day 2. Now they feel like they've regressed. They freak out. And then we see a relapse on nicotine. So we always tell people, get through 72, get through the first 3 days, although I could probably expand that to the first 5 days. Sure, you're going to see more irritability, more mood swings, things like that. This is also typically where you're going to start to see some of the physical symptoms kick in. Dizziness, often described as like brain fog, sweating because of the detox process. Headaches are going to probably occur because of the changes of vasodilation that's happening. It's like when you quit caffeine and you ever get a caffeine withdrawal headache, it's because of that vasodilation. The blood vessels started to dilate. All of these things are normal physical physiological changes that happen when you quit nicotine. Week 1, you might notice your appetite goes up. Nicotine, yes, it does have an impact on appetite and potentially appetite suppression, but I'm going to be honest, that has a lot more to do with blood sugar changes, and we're going to talk about those in a little bit. Fatigue, again, sleep disturbances, insomnia is very, very normal, which also doesn't help the brain fog or the fatigue. Difficulty concentrating. When you're addicted to nicotine, every time you use it, not only are you satisfying the cravings, which helps with focus, right? Because if I crave nicotine and then I satisfy that craving, I can now focus on whatever it is I want to focus on. But nicotine also stimulates adrenaline, norepinephrine, which can help with focus. It kind of puts your body into this mild state of a fight or flight response, which is what spikes blood sugar levels, spikes adrenaline levels, and then increases focus temporarily. So that you're lacking that. It also prevents the breakdown of acetylcholine in the brain, which can help with memory. So this is where when people stop using nicotine, they feel this lack of focus. Now, I really want to emphasize something while we're on this point in week 1. A lot of times people will use nicotine and they'll think they're like getting really locked into their work or their sport or whatever they're doing. More often than not, once you've developed an addiction and a dependence to the substance, you've lost that initial benefit of focus. And the reason why it feels like nicotine's allowing you to focus so much better at this point is because you've now put a temporary halt on the cravings, the withdrawal symptoms, and the detox process that you go through every few hours when you're actively addicted to nicotine. So it's like, if I'm addicted to nicotine and all I can think about is consuming more nicotine, well, of course I can't focus until I use nicotine. Of course I can't lock in until I use nicotine, right? So just think about that if you're suffering from addiction. Weeks 2 to 4, you might notice the cravings start to decrease, particularly if you can get through the 2-week mark, which is when the byproducts of nicotine start to leave your system. You might notice a drop in cravings. You're also going to notice around 4 weeks that and we're going to talk about this more later, but the dopamine levels in your brain and the blood sugar levels should be starting to rebalance, which blood sugar and dopamine definitely has an impact on craving and intensity of cravings and severity of it and all that. So that usually starts to take a turn for the positive. We'll say around week 4. Okay. Now, cravings are less. You're not desiring this drug as much. So your mood is going to start to get better. You're going to be less irritable, less anxious. I'll be honest, for a lot of people, myself included, the anxiety after quitting took me longer than 4 weeks for that to subside. Now, if you're quitting smoking cigarettes or quitting vaping, you probably noticed in the first few weeks that you were coughing up a bunch of crap, and that was your lungs detoxing. You should start to notice a decrease in the coughing in this lung detox process somewhere around week 4. 1 to 3 months, and I'm really going to say the 3-month mark is super important. We should be seeing an improvement in sleep, which means improved energy levels. When we're sleeping better, we're able to focus better. When we have more energy, we're able to focus better. That brain fog, our cognitive function, all of that should be coming back, especially in the presence of our circulation restoring in our extremities. If you use a lot of nicotine, you probably know, whether it's smoking, vaping, pouches, gum, your extremities probably get cold, your hands, your feet. That's because of that decreased blood flow, which can also damage the brain, which can also damage the bones and the joints and our muscles and things like that, right? Anything that restricts blood flow isn't good for that, especially if you're abusing that thing like most people do with nicotine. Circulation should be returning at this point. And I call this the 3-month hump. It's usually about 90 days for the excess nicotine receptors that have developed in your brain while actively addicted to nicotine to return back down to normal levels. And that's about 3 months. So when we're talking to people about quitting and working with people, we're really encouraging them to try and push for that 3-month mark, because at that point, for a lot of people, it's like a light switch goes off and things just tend to significantly improve if they hadn't already improved in the first month to 2 months. Because now you have now at 3 months, you're about the same number of nicotine receptors in the brain as a non-vapor or non-smoker, okay? Months 3 to 9, most physical withdrawal symptoms should be done. Headache, fatigue, all that stuff should be done. The cravings should be significantly less after that third month, and your breathing should continue to improve. And now we're really aiming to get to the 1 year mark. And look, for most addictions, it's widely accepted that it's about a year for the brain to completely rewire in new habits, new traits, new behaviors. I always say to people when we work with them, yeah, sure, it takes time for the brain to heal, but I think it takes about a year to go through each of life's various experiences, happy moments, sad moments, times of celebration, times of remorse, good events, bad events, the life, death, of a person, holidays, change of seasons. It takes a year to go through all those things. And I think it's not until we go through each of those situations in the absence of nicotine or absent of nicotine that our brain is really able to adjust to this. So that's why I personally think it takes a year. But yeah, craving should be gone. There does come a point where you won't crave nicotine. Lung function should be back to normal. After 5 years, your risk of a heart problem reduces to that of someone who doesn't smoke or vape. After 10 years, your risk of cancer is significantly reduced. Again, this is in regard to people who are smoking, not just nicotine, okay? Full physical recovery by 15 years, okay? Why does nicotine withdrawal occur? Well, nicotine has a strong impact on hormones and neurotransmitters in our body. Once you're addicted to nicotine, you develop billions more nicotine receptors than someone who doesn't use nicotine. Upon quitting, the chemistry in your brain, it all has to start to rewire, okay? It has to get used to new habits, new patterns, new pathways. So now you're lacking something that your body has become dependent upon. And this creates very physiological and psychological changes that result in withdrawal. The specific physiological changes that occur or that quitting nicotine has an impact on are cortisol, your blood sugar levels. Every time you eat food converts to glucose. That glucose represents your blood sugar levels, and those fluctuate throughout the day. Quitting nicotine impacts blood sugar. It impacts cortisol. It impacts dopamine, the neurotransmitter in your brain that's not only responsible for making you feel good, but that's responsible for your ability to seek and repeat a behavior over and over and over again. It's like it's closely hardwired into the reward pathways of the brain, dopamine is. And then nicotine has an impact on adrenaline and norepinephrine, those fight or flight responses in neurotransmitters in our body. So when we quit, each of these things are impacted. Specifically on cortisol. Cortisol is the body's primary stress hormone. You can see here in the photo, those are your kidneys. Those yellow things are your adrenal glands, which sit on top of your kidneys, and they are what are responsible for making the stress hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is also referred to as a fat storage hormone in many cases. So it regulates metabolism, blood sugar, and the person's immune response. Cortisol levels will increase in response to stress, whether it's psychological or physiological. Okay, so when you consume nicotine consumption has been tied to elevated levels of cortisol during active consumption, which is not a good thing for weight loss and stress management and just the overall strain on our body day to day. That's a bad thing. Now, when you quit, there's two types of scenarios that could occur. You're going to get fluctuating cortisol levels. You're going to see a drop in them because you're not putting your body under the constant stress of nicotine consumption, but you might be stressed because of cravings for nicotine. And you might be physiologically stressed. You might be by nicotine withdrawal symptoms. So cravings, psychological stress, physical stress of nicotine detox, spike in cortisol levels. All right. And elevated cortisol can lead to a whole host of different symptoms and problems. Okay. What's happened is when you're dependent on nicotine, you rely on that to maintain whatever the baseline level of cortisol in your body that it's become acclimated to throughout nicotine addiction. Now you've quit. That baseline level of cortisol has now become disrupted, okay? And fluctuations in cortisol can result in fatigue, irritability, increased stress, cravings, sleep disturbances, increased hunger. I could go on and on and on. Just go online if you want after this and Google, cortisol level symptoms, right? High cortisol symptoms, low cortisol symptoms, fluctuating symptoms. And then ask yourself, wait a minute, am I struggling because of nicotine withdrawal? Or is this really more a story of cortisol function and cortisol dysregulation? And look, you don't need to guess at this. Cortisol is something that can be tested you could test it through saliva. You can test it in blood work. It just depends on the physician that you're working with and how they want to test it. We typically do saliva testing if we're doing this with people. And in some cases, if the person really seems to be struggling, we'll order a blood panel too. But I digress. So cortisol symptoms. So how do we manage fluctuating cortisol levels? That becomes the question. Well, gentle exercise. Ideally, if you can do it first thing in the morning. I usually recommend walking or swimming or yoga, gentle yoga. You want to do in the beginning, it's my recommendation not to do something super taxing on your body. A lot of people will get really motivated to quit nicotine. They'll go do these really labor intensive workouts, really, really intense. And that's physical stress on your body. So if your body's already like super stressed from nicotine withdrawal symptoms, and now you're slamming it with a really intense workout repetitively, that might overstress your body and make things worse. So that's why I say for the first 2 weeks, treat it kind of like you have the flu, the quitter's flu. A lot of people feel that that's a legitimate term, the quitter's flu. Gentle exercise, walking first thing in the morning, something like that, swimming, yoga. Deep breathing exercises are great. If you're not familiar with it, box breathing and the physiological sigh. Physiological sigh. Two sharp, it's one long inhale through the nose, a sharp inhale through the nose, and then an exhale through the mouth. You do that 5 or 6 times, chances are you're going to get a little bit of a head rush and feel buzzed even after doing it, okay? But deep breathing can help. Avoiding excessive amounts of caffeine, sugar, and alcohol, all things that can negatively impact cortisol, especially caffeine. A lot of people will quit vaping. They'll start pounding caffeine, pounding energy drinks. And look, a little bit of caffeine is fine, but the goal of quitting is to feel better. So you don't want to be doing things that are counterproductive to your body healing. We want to rebalance the cortisol levels. So if you're quitting smoking, you're quitting vaping, but you're eating a ton of crap food and you're pounding a bunch of caffeine or your alcohol intake went up, it's counterproductive. You're ruining the whole point in quitting by doing so, okay? And it's not that I'm trying to create a person who's like super, super disciplined and regimented. It's just, look, you have a goal in mind, and that goal is to feel better. And you're not going to feel better if you're continuing to do things that counteract the rebalancing and the homeostasis that needs to occur in the body in order for you to feel better. Supplementing with something like KSM-66 ashwagandha, hands down one of my favorite supplements when it comes to quitting. KSM-66 ashwagandha has over 24 clinical gold standard trials proving its effectiveness across the board when it comes to balancing cortisol levels, helping to reduce stress and anxiety, improving sleep, improving recovery time, physical recovery after stressful events or strenuous exercise, i.e. withdrawal could be a stressful event. You could view it that way. I like KSM-66 ashwagandha so much, I actually have a supplement, Kick It Crave Less chewing gum. We're the only people in the world who have put this into a chewing gum with another ingredient called N-acetylcysteine to help reduce cravings. So if you're into ashwagandha, if you read about it and you like it, by all means, check out our chewing gum product, Kick It Crave Less chewing gum at kickitrevolution.com. Also, focus on getting a good night's sleep. KSM-66 can help with that, but really, don't stay up all night because your body needs sleep in order to heal things. Okay, so that's how we address cortisol. Now, what about dopamine? Generally speaking, after you quit, it's going to take about, they say on average, if you've read the book by Dr. Anna Lembke, Dopamine Nation, it's a great book, probably one of the best books out there on dopamine. She talks about dopamine detoxing. She talks about why we're so hardwired to seek dopamine and what we can do with that. It's just a really good read. Dopamine Nation by Dr. Anna Lembke. I'll put it in the video description. But it's about 30 days for the dopamine levels to rebalance, okay? It's responsible for pleasure, repetition, and reward. Nicotine triggers, I think it's like a 250% more increase than your normal dopaminergic uh, activities. Okay. So it gives us a much bigger boost to dopamine. And that's where we get that reward and that high that comes with using nicotine. But the problem is now we've set this new standard for baseline. We've increased the threshold to experience pleasure. All right. And over time, by doing this, your brain is going to actually start to downregulate dopamine, and you might enter a state of dopamine deficit. And we see this in particular. And I can tell you this, if you're at a point where your nicotine addiction just feels painful, like this is no longer a pleasurable experience anymore, smoking cigarettes, vaping, dipping tobacco, using Zyn pouches, whatever, chances are you're in that state of dopamine deficit. And this is also where we start to see people enter a state of anhedonia, a loss of pleasure, a lack of joy in life, because that threshold has now been set so significantly. And if you think about what my programs help with now, imagine you, maybe you or someone else is nicotine, cannabis, adult media content, 2 to 3 energy drinks a day. Think about what's happened to that dopamine regulation. Think about what's happened to that threshold for dopamine function and dopamine release. It's so screwed up and so high, right? So that's why we talk about this stuff. Here's the messed up part about dopamine, though. So when you quit, you're lacking the very thing that you need to be motivated to repeat new behaviors over and over and over again. That's one of the things that can make quitting suck, right? Sometimes people are like, I can't find motivation to do it. I just really don't feel compelled to, but I know I should. Yeah, most people don't. To quote David Goggins, right? Kind of like you said, when you weigh 3, if you don't know who that is, he's done a lot of weight loss. He's an ultra marathon runner. Like, the dude's nuts. But he talks about his weight loss journey. He used to weigh 300 pounds. And he's like, look, there's no motivation when you weigh 300 pounds. Like, it sucks. Like, you've overeaten, all of your joints hurt, you get out of breath easily, you don't feel good. There's no motivation to want to lose weight. That very thing is lacking. Whether it's an extreme situation of obesity or addiction to nicotine or any other drug, it's a very similar idea. Okay. So when you quit nicotine, you get a sudden drop in dopamine even more. So the thing that was maybe giving you a little flicker of dopamine is now down even more. So further depressed mood, further lack of pleasure, anhedonia, difficulty concentrating, increased cravings. The brain takes time to rebalance dopamine production. 30 to 90 days is usually what we tell people. This makes it harder to resist the cravings in the early stages of quitting, because your brain is just like, I want dopamine, I need dopamine, and I know a quick and easy source of getting at least a little flicker of it, and that is nicotine. And you're telling me I got to go take a walk or swim or, whatever, take a cold shower, whatever. Yeah, listen to good music. It just takes so much less effort to get that hit of dopamine from nicotine. And that's why nicotine is so appealing. And then we run into these symptoms. Now, what can you do to manage dopamine? Focus on healthy sources of it. Exercise, regular physical activity, right? Sunlight exposure, tyrosine-rich foods like almonds, avocados, bananas. All of these things can help boost dopamine levels. Mindfulness, meditation, stress reduction, all of that's going to help with dopamine. For me personally, it really turned out to be partaking in hobbies, and hobbies eventually turned into side hustles, and side hustles turned into obsessions and passions. And that's really where I find most of my dopamine from. Transitioning into creating YouTube videos for people on how to quit was just a wonderful thing for my quitting journey, because not only did it become a career and obsession and a passion of mine and an income stream for me, but it was just a 24/7 access to dopamine, right? I can sit down, shoot a video, edit a video, publish a video any time of the day, 7 days a week, anywhere in the world, right? So kind of like nicotine, where it was 24/7 access, content creation for me was that. And you're going to want to think of what could it be for you? It might not be content creation, but what could it be for you? Managing dopamine with KSM-66 ashwagandha and N-acetylcysteine cysteine. So look, you don't have to look at my supplement, Kick It Crave Less Chewing Gum at kickitrevolution.com, which I would highly recommend if you're quitting nicotine. If you don't like it, we'll give you your money back. But you can get capsules too, okay? KSM 66, typically like 300 milligrams once to twice a day, morning, afternoon, evening. N-acetylcysteine, 600 milligram capsules up to 3 times a day. Now, okay, KSM's impact on dopamine. So KSM 66 ashwagandha, it's been shown to support dopamine regulation, helping the brain to adjust normal dopamine levels after quitting nicotine. Mood enhancement. It stabilizes dopamine. It stabilizes cortisol. It helps even with blood sugar, which is going to reduce feelings of perhaps depression, anxiety, and anhedonia. Cognitive support. KSM 66 ashwagandha, really interesting, kind of like nicotine, has been shown to lightly stimulate the adrenaline pathways while at the same time prevent the breakdown of acetylcholine in the brain, helping with focus, memory, and concentration. So that's why I love KSM 66 ashwagandha, because similar to nicotine, it gives you that stimulated yet relaxed effect all in one shot. That's what makes nicotine a fascinating drug. It makes a person stimulated and relaxed. That's why people like nicotine for working and stuff like that. KSM 66 ashwagandha, particularly in a chewing gum where you're going to get buccal absorption of the ingredients, unlike a capsule or a gummy that has to go through your liver and gut first before you absorb it. Fast acting, helps with focus. Now, N-acetylcysteine has also been shown to help regulate dopamine levels and help with dopamine production, the other ingredient that we put into our chewing gum. Now, blood sugar is a big one. So a lot of people, when they quit smoking or vaping, they're worried about weight gain and stuff like that, and cravings. And what I'm trying to get to you guys is, if we can understand what a craving is, it's a dysregulation of cortisol. It's a dysregulation of dopamine. It's a dysregulation of adrenaline. It's a dysregulation of blood sugar. Now we can start to attack a craving and have a deeper understanding of what it is and how to manage it. So nicotine has a pretty significant impact on blood sugar levels. When you're actively using it, it spikes blood sugar. When you quit nicotine, your blood sugar levels can become unstable. This can lead to irritability, cravings, brain fog, fatigue, headache, a whole host of symptoms. Symptoms that sound just like what people refer to as nicotine withdrawal. I'm going to call it blood sugar dysregulation. Unstable blood sugar can worsen withdrawal symptoms, intensifying the cravings and the mood swings. So how do we balance blood sugar when we quit? Consuming meals that are more focused on your protein, your healthy fats, your fibers, that's all going to help to prevent blood sugar spikes. I also recommend eating fruit, and your blueberries, strawberries, raspberries. Fruit is just a great source. It has fiber in it, antioxidants. It does contain sugar, but it's different than like the sugar in a candy bar or a cereal or some junk like that. Reduce processed sugar for sure. Stay hydrated. Proper hydration is not only key to help your detox process, but also in helping with blood sugar regulation. And then there's supplements that can help. Believe it or not, KSM 66 ashwagandha is yet again a supplement that's been shown to help with not only cortisol, not only adrenaline production and dopamine production, but also blood sugar. Chromium and magnesium supplements, though, are also really good. Cinnamon extract has been shown to help too. KSM 66 ashwagandha has been shown to help stabilize and reduce blood sugar fluctuations, which can then in turn potentially reduce nicotine cravings, mood swings related to nicotine withdrawal, and some of the brain fog. Now, neat thing with our gum, Kick It Crave Less Chewing Gum at kickitrevolution.com, NAC, N-acetylcysteine, has been shown not only to reduce cravings for nicotine, but also for stimulants, for alcohol, for sugary foods. So wouldn't that, in theory, be beneficial for someone who's quitting smoking or quitting vaping? I certainly thought it would be. That's why we put it into our chewing gum product. So I've mentioned KSM 66 ashwagandha a lot of times. And whether, again, you get my product or you go to Vitamin Shop, I like Vitamin Shop brand products. They do independent third-party testing, just like we do on our chewing gum. So I could say if you're going to buy capsules, go to Vitamin Shop and buy their brand. But KSM 66 ashwagandha, it's a highly concentrated full spectrum extract of the ashwagandha herb or plant, okay? It's adaptogenic, meaning that it works with your body and it meets your body where your body is at to help regulate stress, to help balance cortisol, to help balance dopamine. So in theory, if your cortisol is too high, KSM is going to help you lower it. If your cortisol is too low, KSM is going to help you stimulate it. That's what adaptogenic herbs mean. They work with your body. Again, over 24 clinical gold standard trials. KSM 66 ashwagandha isn't just he said, she said, maybe it works. It's a proven thing. The overall benefits in my argument for KSM 66 for nicotine withdrawal, reduction of elevated cortisol, which can help to reduce stress and anxiety, improvement of sleep quality, which can result in more energy, enhanced mood and cognitive function, which can result in reduced brain fog, enhanced focus, and stabilization of mood, energy and metabolic support, like I said, really good for recovery, blood sugar stability, reducing cravings and irritability, not only for nicotine, but also for sugary foods, and enhanced recovery. Something that we would want when we're going through the physical process or the physical aspects of nicotine withdrawal. Now, this is what my chewing gum product looks like. Of course, I'm going to plug my own product, but no, this presentation, hopefully you realize, isn't just a sales pitch. You could take any of this information, cortisol dysregulation, blood sugar dysregulation, adrenaline dysregulation, and dopamine dysregulation. You could plug it into Google or into wherever you want, and you could start to look at natural ways and other alternatives to balance these things and approach these things, because nicotine withdrawal is very closely connected. And again, when we're educated and we know what's going on in our body, we're less fearful, we're less anxious, and we tend to be a lot more problem-solving focused as like, okay, this is nicotine withdrawal. This isn't some big, mysterious, bad thing that we don't understand. It's a matter of dysregulation of these things, and we got to just address that. Why did I choose a chewing gum, though, versus a capsule? So in this bottle, there's 90 pieces of chewing gum for 70-something bucks. 90 pieces, okay? And when you go on our website, if you download our free 7-step guide to quit nicotine at kickitrevolution.com, you get a discount code to your email with the guide, okay? But anyways, chewing gum is more bioavailable and faster acting than a capsule. When you chew gum, you chew a piece of this and then you tuck it in between your jaw and your lip and you suck on it. The ingredients get absorbed buccally in through your soft tissues here. So they bypass the liver and the gut and they go right into your bloodstream first, then past the liver. So you get way better absorption, okay? Chewing gum also helps with that boredom. It helps with that oral fixation obsession component of it. It just makes it easier to resist putting that hand-to-mouth motion. When we combine KSM 66 ashwagandha with N-acetylcysteine, we're the only and the first people in the world to do this, okay? But the goal was to help address cravings, cortisol levels, blood sugar levels, adrenaline levels, and dopamine levels. So what about nicotine replacement therapy? Well, I'll say this. There's a lot of people who use our chewing gum and who do that and just stop. They just stop cold turkey, no patches, no Nicorette gum, no nicotine patch, no nicotine stick, no nicotine pouch. They just stop, okay? So that's one thing. When it comes to nicotine replacement therapy, it can help for sure, especially in extreme situations. But mind you, the longer you're using nicotine, the longer you're keeping those nicotine receptors alive. I also don't really feel that nicotine addresses a lot of the issues that we talked about today in the positive way that KSM 66 ashwagandha and N-acetylcysteine do. Now, if I am to recommend a nicotine replacement therapy product to a person, I'm typically recommending the patches. And I usually start, a lot of clients we work with, they'll be either starting on step 2 or step 3 of the patch. So instead of a 21 milligram time released patch, they're doing a 7 or 15 milligram time release patch. Because The patches have way less likelihood of abuse potential. They tend to have less side effects than like a Nicorette gum or a nicotine mint or something like that. And there's no room for user error. I could wind up chewing 20 pieces of Nicorette gum in a single day. And actually, in the beginning of when you quit, they may recommend that you do so. A patch, you put it on and that's it for the day. Unless we run into a situation where someone's slapping multiple patches on their body, which would be a horrible idea and could definitely cause nicotine overdose, hospitalization, and possibly death. So don't do that. So we recommend a patch, though. Less room for error, easy to do, no BS. You don't have to think about it. And that's why I like patches. Now, I also have people who will use the gum in conjunction with a really low milligram patch when they're quitting. And I've seen that work really well too. If you need help coming up with a plan, though, just reach out. You can see where you can book consultations with our offices and the pinned comment in the video description. You'll see contact information there. And that's really it. So do you need nicotine to quit nicotine? I don't think so. Personally, I don't think that's what you need to do. I think in order to quit nicotine, you need the right mindset. Supplementation certainly wouldn't hurt, especially if it's our Kick It Crave Less chewing gum products found at kickitrevolution.com. Check those out. And that's it. You need some motivation, you need determination, you need grit, and you'll do just fine. That's the reality. But hey, if you're just trying to quit smoking and you're just trying to quit vaping, but not necessarily nicotine, well, then nicotine replacement therapy products are certainly less harmful and could be a good option for you. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to check out that pinned comment or the video description to learn more about our one-on-one coaching consultations, our supplement products, and then I have a bunch of free handouts. I have a full ebook for free. I have a 7-step guide for free, all stuff to help you quit. Good luck. I hope this makes sense. Follow me into the next video where I talk about other forms of nicotine replacement therapy or other ways to consume nicotine. I'll see you guys there.